Welcome to She Said Homestead, the podcast that explores homesteading from a range of perspectives. We're Sage and Mickayla, two homesteaders, each with unique experiences, properties, and future goals for our homesteads. We're discussing various homesteading topics, sharing our personal experiences as women working full-time who are managing homesteads as well, and shining a light on the stories of other inspiring homesteaders.
Before we dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy our podcast, please consider leaving a review. It really helps us grow and share these homesteading stories with even more people.
Hey there guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Mickayla from Calico Cow Acres.
And I'm Sage from Terra Nova Acres, and we both have homesteads in Western North Carolina.
Today we're going to be talking about how society eats now. And I think this is going to be a really interesting topic. We're probably going to get into some things we've not really discussed here before. But before we get into all of that, what did you get up to this week, Sage?
Ooh, still, I'm spending a lot of time in the kitchen. That's just the name of the game this time of year. But a little bit different. So I have been harvesting some herbs and things that I've foraged, honestly, around the property. And I spent the time to turn those into some tinctures. So those are steeping right now. And then in a few weeks, I'll be able to strain those off and put them into dropper bottles to use through the winter. And a lot of them are, I made them and I'm going to set them aside to have in the pantry for like immune boosting, you know, when I feel something coming on, or taking throughout the winter because it is just kind of the season where we get sick, to try to prevent that. And I'm going to see how I like that because it's a new project for me. It's not really something that I've dabbled in too much, but I'm really curious to see how those turn out. So I'm excited. I also went with my neighbors to a property that they know of and harvested so many pears. Basically, the person who lives there is kind of older and can't really keep up with them now, so they're just trying to give them away. And so I thought that I would walk away from that with, you know, maybe a basket of pears. I have probably somewhere between 70 and 90 pounds of pears to do something with, and I'll have to figure that out. We were talking about some potential recipes, so pear wine is definitely up there, and then I'll kind of just see whatever I can manage after that, honestly. I don't even know. I don't even know what to do with that many pears. It's ridiculous. And I've tried to share them with people, and they haven't responded. So, yep, lots of pears. And then also I have a bag full of pawpaws to deal with, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a fruit that's native, actually, to North Carolina. And it's a little bit like a banana and a mango, is how I've heard it described. What do you think it tastes like?
I think it looks like, it's like an avocado mango look, but it tastes like a mango-y banana that's really smushy.
Yes, very smushy. I've also heard people think it tastes like vanilla custard. I don't get that part as much, but yeah, I don't know what to do with that many pawpaws either. So it's going to be a lot of creative preservation in the next week's outlook because I really haven't dealt with any of them yet. I also got my hay delivered for the year this week. I get it delivered all at one time because that's when my hay guy has it. So he came and delivered 60 bales of hay to me, and we put it in the hay barn that I have down here. So that's good. I've got that stock for winter that should last me winter. We'll see. And then there's been a little bit of animal drama around here lately. I lost one of my favorite chickens, which was unfortunate. She got egg bound. I tried to help her. It didn't do much, and there's not a whole lot of intervention you can do other than soaking them and hoping that it helps. So she passed. I planted her in the garden next to a fruit tree, so that'll be her remembrance. So that kind of sucked. But also, Athena woke me up early Saturday morning in pain. She had been on and off kind of having an issue with her paw, but it wasn't anything severe. And then Friday evening, she wasn't really putting weight on it. And then Saturday morning, she was like, all right. So she went to the emergency vet Saturday and got looked at. determined that nothing was truly horribly wrong. She got some anti-inflammatories and painkillers, and I took her to her normal vet today. She got some x-rays, and she needs surgery on her shoulder. So gonna get that figured out this week and get her booked for some bone surgery. Yeah.
I have been there so many times with pets, and it's the most like frustrating thing because you want to help them so badly and like you're willing to put the money into it, but it's so expensive. And then you just hate to see them like having to go to the vet like multiple times, and it's just a stressful experience for everybody. Poor girl.
Athena's great. She loves it. She's like, I get to see people and they pet me and they feed me peanut butter. I'm in.
That's good.
And everybody at the vet loves her. Yeah, it's a completely different vet experience than when I bring Copper in. So at least it's not too distressing for her. She does kind of enjoy it, actually. How about you? What'd you get up to this week?
I've been drywalling. Surprise, surprise. I feel like I'm on day 18 now of working on drywall, like every day straight. And I'm really sick of it. I'm really over it. I'm very sore. You're probably gonna have to hear about this for at least another week. Hopefully by then we'll be moved on from it. But I honestly don't remember where I was at with it last week when we talked, but Taylor is gone on a work trip right now, so I'm working on everything by myself. He left a couple days ago, and even before he left, we were still mudding and sanding like crazy, trying to get it to a point where I can do a bunch while he's gone on my own because he's doing the sanding. And so the day he left, I finished priming the hallways, and I actually was able to paint both the ceilings and the walls, one coat on each of those for the hallways. So we have like finished walls in the halls right now, which is really nice, even though I have to do another coat. But I'm going to wait until after we have the subfloor in because he's probably going to end up scraping the walls a little, putting the subfloor in, trying to make it nice and tight. I put up, we have a light that I've had for 2 years that's like a wall, like it's a wall mounted like sconce, and I screwed that into the wall even though it's not actually like connected. The wires aren't connected to the house, just because I wanted to see what it looked like. And my house is feeling more done and it's super exciting, and so I've just been trying to plug away at that. Right before we got on to record tonight, I did the first coat of tape and mud on the wall that had the mold on it. We had to replace all that drywall. Taylor did that right before he left, and so that one's a little bit more behind. I'm trying to get that caught up before he gets home tomorrow night. We've been getting some rain this week, which is really nice because it had been so dry before that, and I've been harvesting peppers like crazy this past week, just going out there and like filling up my shirt every time I'm out there, which is cool. I actually have been so busy with trying to get things preserved and the renovation projects that there were like a bunch of peppers that I had in my fridge and I completely forgot they were in the fridge, and I had like 2-gallon bags full of peppers that just were bad. I saw them yesterday and I was like, oh no. But we have been still preserving a ton of stuff. So I've got salsa and diced tomatoes in the canner from earlier that are just cooling off right now. I did like 19 jars of diced tomatoes this weekend. I was gonna say, you said this at the very beginning when you started about your week. You said you've been in the kitchen a lot. I have been in the living room a lot. But I've been doing canning because all of my kitchen is in my living room right now. So I just like popped up a table and I've been canning in the living room. I canned a bunch of pumpkin, peach salsa, tomatoes, salsa, diced tomatoes, and bread and butter pickles and spicy dill pickles and not spicy dill pickles. All of the things. My whole kitchen is filled with canning jars right now and drywall dust. I picked all of our popcorn, our glass gem popcorn, and it's so pretty. And it actually dried and it actually grew, and I'm really excited to try making popcorn out of it. I'm going to try and save a lot of it to grow next year, but I want to try at least making some batches of popcorn. So I think tomorrow night when Taylor's home, I might try and do that. But yeah, I've been pretty much drywalling and preserving food.
Do you have an idea of when you're going to be able to put your kitchen back together and actually like get back in there after all of the renovations, or is it all just up in the air?
It's a whole process. Basically what needs to happen is we have to get the last drywall we have to get done is the kitchen. Right now it's on the second coat, so I need to do the third coat tomorrow, and then it needs to get sanded one more time, fill in any patches that need little bits of work, like if there are nicks here and there, sand it again, then it needs to get primed. And then at that point we can put the subfloor in, and the subfloor is going to go in the hallway in the kitchen first, and then we can put the regular floors in, like our actual flooring, into the kitchen and the hall, and then we get to move all of the stuff from the living room to the kitchen and put the subfloor and regular flooring in the living room. And then after that, I need to paint the living room and put everything back where it belongs. The goal for that to be done is within the next week and a half. Anybody, I mean, I feel like at the point anybody's listening to this, hopefully I actually have time to edit all the videos, but I've been filming the whole thing. I just haven't had time to put any videos out, but I've got like 5 videos saved up, so I'm probably going to put out, as soon as I can get them edited, like multiple a week for the next couple of weeks, because it's insane. They're just going to keep coming too, because there's so much happening.
Right.
I'm tired. That's the gist of my week, is I'm tired. I've been up till like 3 or 4 a.m., getting up at 7, like here by myself with the cats, trying to make sure everything gets done, and it's just a lot. I say this every time Taylor leaves. I hate when I'm here by myself. It's not easy to do.
I'm like, great, no one's in my way. I get to do things on my schedule. Perfect.
I like that part where I'm like, okay, I can just kind of work on whatever projects I want to do. I can make whatever meals I want. But like, I have the issue where I don't have the timer that tells me, okay, you need to eat now. And so I'll just work until it's like almost midnight, and then I'm starving and I realize it's almost midnight and I'm like, oh, I still have 16 things to do and I haven't eaten all day. I should probably order food. And so I spend a lot more money because I'll order takeout, which I hate doing, but usually after working all night, that's like the only thing that walking out my door and grabbing something and then literally eating in the bathtub while I soak in Epsom salt because I'm so sore from working is like, that's just how I function when I'm by myself, and it's not ideal.
But it's actually a great transition into what we're talking about today, which is how society eats now. And mostly what we're talking about when we say that is the rise of all of these elements of convenience, whether that is, getting meals themselves delivered to your house by DoorDash, or that's getting grocery delivery, those meal kits that you still have to assemble the food, but at least they give you the recipe and all the ingredients for it, right? That is so much more prevalent now these days, and there are, in my opinion, a few different reasons for that.
So I guess for the history of how this has evolved over time, obviously at some point in the past, there wasn't really such thing as convenience foods. Like, everybody was growing the food that they could, and that's the food that they ate for the year. They were preserving it. They were buying things locally. They were raising their own meat, or it's kind of what gets like glamorized by homesteaders, I would say, like the Little House on the Prairie style, like subsistence living, basically. Like, you are living to survive, and surviving to live. And I think probably once people started moving into cities and like industrialization started to happen, that obviously started to wane a little bit, because obviously people can't grow their own food and raise their own animals when they're living in like apartments in a city and they're working in a factory or something. So in the 1920s, frozen food was invented, basically. It was still not like super reliable at that point, so it wasn't very popular. And looking into this, it seems like at that point, like pickled foods or fermented foods were still kind of a more popular preservation and utilization of food at that point. But as time went on and we got into like the 40s and the 50s, post World War II, frozen food was becoming a lot more popular for multiple reasons. One of those reasons being the transportation of that food. The technology of that improved, where they were using dry ice previously, and at that point, post-war, they were able to construct like actually refrigerated and frozen trucks, frozen food trucks. And another factor was, after World War II, a lot more women were entering the workforce or staying in the workforce. And that's kind of when we start getting into things like TV dinners and selling not only just frozen vegetables or frozen meat, it's frozen vegetables with a certain sauce or like actual meals. And then eventually that evolves into like full TV dinners where you're literally just heating this up and it's your full meal and it's convenient.
And then, a little bit further down the road in the mid 50s is when McDonald's really became a bigger deal. It started to become popular, and you see the rise of, not only just the meals that are pre-assembled and you can throw in the microwave and cook really quick, but you can actually go to this restaurant and get a burger really quick and really cheap, which is incredibly convenient. And that, at least in the way that I look back on history, that seems like a huge turning point in terms of food and society.
You also have to think about like the social aspect of that, like going out to a restaurant where it's like you have all the cars parked. Think about like a Sonic, or like in my hometown it was Dairy Depot, where you like drive in and they have like car hops. A&W does that, things like that. That is the epitome of like mid-century America, if you think about it. It's kind of cool. I feel like we don't really have those experiences anymore. That kind of leads to what we have now, though. And I think part of why we have what we have now, which is DoorDash and all of the delivery things, is 2020. I feel like we have to mention that, because I can't remember if those things were super popular before 2020, honestly, because they've just been so prevalent for the last 4 years. But they're very well known now. Like, that is something that everybody knows. If you say, what is the other one? Postmates, DoorDash, all of those things. Everybody has those apps on their phones.
Except me.
Most people. I actually don't keep it on my phone. I only download it if I'm super desperate. I sign back in and I re-download it, or else I will take advantage of it more than I would like.
Right. It's already convenient, but like you said, when 2020 came around, we as the society had to depend on services like that in a whole different way. And, it became so normal to us that even when life started to transition back to more normal, it's still reflexive, or more, at least more reflexive, to go to those apps and order the food, or especially the grocery delivery, that kind of stuff. It's like, once you've integrated it into your life, why would you cut it out unless you have to, right?
Yeah, at least for me, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of other people too, it's like, if I don't have to talk to somebody, why would I? Because I just have so much anxiety. I'm like, if I can just order it and I don't have to like have somebody like look me in the eye and know I'm eating this trash food. Like, please just leave it on my doorstep and let me eat it by myself in the bathtub. And, you know.
Okay. Do you ever get self-conscious going through the checkout at the grocery store when you're like, I have all of this garbage, like snacky sweet food, and the cashier is gonna judge me so harshly? Like, I have to get something else to make it seem like I didn't just come to the store for trash. Like, maybe I was here for something logical or reasonable, and I just saw it and was like, oh, I'm gonna get that too. Do you have that? Is that just me?
No, most of the time, because the only time I buy like junk food is when we go to the salvage store and it's like whatever they have there and it's cheap. And usually I don't feel that bad about it because most of the time it's Taylor putting it in the cart. Most of the time. There's some times where I'm like, okay, I want this cereal, or the Hostess powdered donuts are going in my cart, and then they're immediately going into my mouth as soon as I get in the car.
Okay, you have a scapegoat. I don't. It's just me.
Yeah.
You have Taylor. That's not fair.
If it was just me, I probably would. I can remember when I was in college in undergrad with my friends going shopping one time. We used to go shopping with each other like every weekend for groceries. And it was like a stressful week in the school year. And I had forgotten that I got like a frozen pizza the weekend before. And I was checking out and I was like, man, I haven't had one of these in so long. Completely did not cross my mind that I had one literally the weekend before that. And my friend called me out. She's like, you literally got that exact pizza last weekend. And I still think about that to this day. I'm like, wow.
You have flashbacks whenever you stand in the frozen pizza aisle, don't you?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm never having that pizza again. She made me feel so guilty about it. I'm like, listen, I have 6 classes that I'm taking and I'm working 20 hours a week. Leave me alone.
So when we look at why, as a society, we started to rely on these more convenient foods as opposed to homemade meals, essentially we are delegating to companies what was previously done in the home. To an extent, that's what society's here for, right? Hopefully, as a society, we can build structures that help us out and where we don't have to do so many of those what you might call menial daily tasks and have more time and energy to do other things and go live life in other ways, right? Now, I say that I love cooking. I will choose to do that. That is my hobby. I don't see that necessarily as a tedious menial everyday task, but also sometimes it is a tedious menial everyday task, and sometimes I just go into town and pick up food.
We talk about this in regards to homesteading a lot as far as community goes, where you're not growing necessarily everything for yourself. Even though it would be cool to do so, a lot of the times it's not feasible because there's just so much input that has to happen in a lot of different directions and you can't manage that. And so it's just like, it's a little bit of a different form when you're looking at convenience foods from the grocery store versus outsourcing to another local farmer for raising pigs or cows for you and then trading with them for meat or something. It's trading money for that convenience and the sustenance that it gives you, whatever level of sustenance that may be. But yeah, we definitely, we talk about this in homesteading a lot. And I think that it's parallel. They're just different forms of that trade-off.
And another aspect of this is largely, the role of women and the roles that women have played in the last 100 or so years and even longer than that. Historically speaking, traditionally, the family structure is a married man and a woman, and the man goes off and earns the money and brings money home, and the woman is the one who keeps the house, cleans the house, cooks the food, takes care of the kids. And that is how traditional society has been structured for a decently long time. especially in American and European cultures. And starting after World War II and then moving, throughout the 50s and throughout the 60s, women started to take up more and more of the workplace, which is a good thing, right? Like, women should be allowed to go off and work if and when they want to, but also whatever family structure works for you, works for you. And so this is meant to be an objective conversation. This is not by any means us passing judgment on whatever version of life works for you. We're supportive of that.
We want this discussion to be focused on the food aspect of things, but along with that comes us talking about these social structures and like how things were in the past and how they are now. And obviously that has changed a lot over the last, 7,500 years.
So again, traditionally speaking, the woman is making sure that the groceries, the grocery list gets made, the meal plan gets made. She knows what the family needs to eat. She goes and gets it at the grocery store. She goes and cooks it, make sure that the meals are on the table for that entire family, which is a huge job. And when you look at how society is now, take me, my life, for example, right? I don't have a partner. I am here doing all of this by myself. So I'm holding down a full-time job, and I'm also trying to do all of these things, like cook for myself and figure out meal plans and do all this stuff. And sometimes it's just more than I can handle. And so I'm glad that I have the option for these convenience foods, even if it's not something that I want to eat all the time.
So for you, you've kind of structured your life around homesteading, but it's also very much structured around working a 9-to-5 job. And you don't want to rely on those convenience foods. But there are a lot of people who what they eat every day is just something that they have to check off their list, their mental checklist, because they need to eat to continue doing whatever they're doing throughout the day. It's not something that they think about all of the time and savor and are brought a ton of joy by doing it, like it is for us. Like, we thoroughly enjoy eating food, making food, growing food, talking about food, obviously. So I think for a lot of people, though, that's not the case. It's very much something that's just a necessary evil of being a human and, having to survive. So I think a lot of people are perfectly happy just going to the store, grabbing whatever looks good to them, sounds good to them, whatever an influencer told them sounds good or tastes good, and they want to try it, and then taking that home and opening up the package and microwaving it and calling it good because their stomach's full. So more than just the robotic act of going to the store and getting those foods and just calling it good and calling it a necessary evil, do you think there are other reasons why we rely so much on convenience foods now?
For sure. I mean, a lot of our food habits as people are going to be highly influenced by what was normal when we were growing up. If you grew up in a household where sitting down to a family dinner, homemade dinner, was normal, you're going to be naturally predisposed to gravitate towards that. Versus if you grew up in a household where you had two working parents and maybe they worked more than one job each, right? Maybe they had multiple jobs each, and there was just no time for that. That was a luxury that was not afforded. And so if you didn't grow up around that, you're going to be more predisposed to, okay, well, this is my view of food. So, some people might just not be into it. They might just not gravitate towards it. And then some people, maybe they never had the opportunity to get to know that or learn to cook vicariously through whoever was in the house with them.
Something else that I think could contribute to this, and it's not something that I really want to get a ton into, it's just something that I remember from school, is talking about food deserts. And some people just literally don't have access to any sort of fresh food. Like, that was a huge thing that we focused on while I was in undergrad, was looking at communities that aren't within like 40 minutes of a grocery store, and they have like Dollar General. I grew up somewhere that was, the closest grocery store was over 20 minutes away, and we had Dollar General. Like, that's where my mom got a lot of our groceries often. I think that there are a lot of economic and social and a myriad of other influences. Obviously, like whether your mom cooked for you or not, like you said, or you sat down to dinner, or your parents worked multiple jobs or weird shifts. Obviously, that's going to influence a lot of different things. What you read as a child. Like, I read Little House on the Prairie, and I've always been just like so interested in that lifestyle because of that. Like, I've always been intrigued by a garden because of that. So I think there are a lot of influences that kind of determine that. And right now, we also have influencers, which not necessarily always a bad thing. But I do think that there are so many people who do like the mukbangs on YouTube, where they just get all of these different foods and they sit there and eat everything and try it and like tell you how it is. And that kind of like has spiraled into just like pushing certain products, food products in particular. Like, I don't want to like say any specific brands, but I'm thinking of a handful of popular ones that I know that even Homestead influencers push all the time, certain places to shop. Again, not necessarily bad things, but they're all just things that they influence you and the way you think about food and the way you eat, whether you're realizing it or not.
Yeah. Food deserts are like a topic that we could talk about for an hour for sure. Yeah, to fully evaluate that topic, we would have to give it a lot of time, because there's a lot of things that go into that.
Like I mentioned earlier with the community-based homestead situation where you're bartering or trading, or even just buying local meat from a farmer, that doesn't really exist on a large scale. Like, I can't go to the grocery store, to like our local grocery store or Walmart or another big grocery store, and go to the deli and ask for a cut of meat that is from a local animal. Like, that doesn't exist. And especially in somewhere like a food desert, that's definitely not something that you can do. But overall, the lack of community around food, especially in the US, I feel like in other countries, the community around food, there's a lot more like rich culture, and food is a lot more celebrated in meal times, and spending time together around food is a lot more celebrated. And that's something that I would love to see, and I want to like recreate in my own experience with like friends and family and stuff. I want to like create that culture around food where it's like enjoyed and you enjoy the people around you. But yeah, I feel like overall, like, people just don't have that community with food. I could call Sage, I could call you and say, hey, I need to can up like 6 bushels of tomatoes today. Can you come help me? And, you know, maybe you're free to come help me. But that's something where it's not like a given, where like I know 20 people who we could get together and bring all of our tomatoes together and just not only do the work and get the project done, but like sit there and talk to each other and experience the process together, and just like grow that community and grow those relationships. That's not really something that we have. Like, we could do that, but there are so many other things that we have to do every day and on a yearly basis, where it's like, that's just really hard to make time for in like modern society.
Right. I think particularly in American culture, we are sold what I would call the lie of individualism, and that you need to be able to do all of this stuff by yourself. And if you can't keep up with it with little to no outside support, then you're the problem. You're the issue. It's not that working a job, feeding yourself healthy food, paying taxes, bills, what are all the other random things that are just so like adulting that you have to keep
Going
up
to
with?
appointments.
Oh my god, doctor's appointments? That's why I don't go to the doctor. But that's stupid story. Right? Like just the basics of taking care of yourself and being a participating member of American society
Keeping children
is
alive.
exhausting. Oh, yeah. There's a reason I don't have kids. I might not be great at that. And so, yeah, it's absurd that what for so long have been these community-based tasks, especially parenting, and are still more community-based tasks in other cultures. It's absurd to me that we Americans, we see it as we have to do everything ourselves. We have to take everything upon ourselves, and you're weak if you can't manage it. That's crazy to me.
Says the person who also does homesteading by herself.
Look, I I have hyper independence issues. That's my own shenanigans. That's different.
My take on that is pretty similar. I also would like to add in, if I haven't already mentioned it, that like at some point in time it was somebody's idea to make money on selling food to people so that somebody else could make money because there's more people in the workforce. But I won't get into that too much. But yeah, I mean, to your point, as much as I dislike the fact that so many people aren't interested in the food that they're consuming, because I just don't think that's like a healthy way to go about life, like mentally or physically, it's completely valid. I get it. I understand why some people just do not want or care to think about what they're putting into their bodies as far as food goes. Having to think about that on top of the million and one other things you have to think about and remember and keep up with every day, like, I get it. It's tough. If it wasn't something that if it wasn't like the only thing that brings my mind to complete peace as far as like anxious thoughts, and it goes completely silent when I'm focusing on cooking, if it wasn't for that, I probably would also see it as just another stressful thing added to my to-do list. And sometimes it does get to that point. Sometimes it is like, oh, I don't want to cook tonight. I'm too busy, like last night. And you know what? In those circumstances, convenience is fine. I'm not going to beat myself up for that because it's not the norm. But I get it. I get why people would rather just say, here, take my money, give me food. I'm tired. We're all tired.
Right. I did that tonight. I did not make myself a homemade dinner tonight. I was out running errands and I said, I am absolutely stopping at a Zaxby's drive-thru and I'm gonna let you cook my dinner for me. So there are absolutely, benefits to having that. I don't want this conversation to be totally dragging convenience foods. We both utilize them. They are a godsend sometimes. And so, like, at the end of the day, it is nice. At least I don't think either of us are trying to advocate for, the abolition of these things.
I think without those things and without the option to occasionally utilize them for what they are, other parts of my life would suffer. Like, I would be getting significantly less sleep sometimes. Like, if I had to make dinner last night, I would have been up till 5 instead of 3. And that was late enough for me. So I definitely see the benefit in it, and it is, as much as I like the food that I make, it is nice sometimes to just say, hey, let's, we have guests here, or it's a special like a special anniversary or something. We're like, let's go out to eat and enjoy ourselves so we can just like spend time together. And like maybe we are cooking dinner together on other nights, but it's like you can just go and like not have to think about it sometimes. And valuing other parts of your life, your mental health, like that is also very important.
Right. And when you get into the topic of maybe less drive-throughs and that kind of stuff, but actual restaurants, that, at least to me, is an art form. If you get to go to a restaurant where a chef cares about, what they've put together and what they're putting in front of you, that is not just getting food. That is appreciating an art form and an artist and sitting down in this ambiance that they have curated for you, with a menu that they have curated for you, with ingredients that they have curated for you, and like this overall experience. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm biased because I've worked in restaurants and I have a love-hate relationship with it. But both working in restaurants and eating in restaurants, I have such an appreciation for what that is, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Same. I mean, especially if you're around bigger cities, like even within an hour of them, like you'll be able to find a restaurant near you if you're within some sort of city area that likely has local food. I know of at least a few in Asheville, and it's a huge thing in our area. We have a lot of local food. Like there's a huge local food scene here. Same with Michigan. I don't know about other states, but I can almost guarantee if you look hard enough, you'll be able to find somewhere with a menu that shows you where they source things, and it will be local.
Do you feel like if either, you set a rule or a boundary for yourself where you were like, okay, I'm going to cut convenience food, wherever you want to draw that line, out of my life and just rely on like this homemade food, if you either made that boundary for yourself or if those things just didn't exist, do you think that you would then go out of your way to make those quote unquote fast foods that are like the homemade, in your instance, Homestead fast food convenience foods to have on hand? What do you feel like the adjustment would be? Would you plan better, or would you just not eat?
If I was by myself, I'd probably just eat things that are already in jars, like peaches and applesauce, if I'm being completely honest. But that's a hard question because I already kind of do that, where I really try to prepare pieces of meals so that I have buns in the freezer ready to go if we want burgers. I have breads ready to go if I want toast one day, or if I want to have mushroom toast like I've been obsessed with for the last week and a half. I have chicken noodle soup canned in case I'm sick. I have sloppy joe sauce ready to go, so I just have to do ground beef. If I were to completely cut out any sort of convenience food, I feel like I'd really have to take a very good portion of time and just really like prep all of those things, get them all canned. I don't think it's something that I could commit to consistently doing on like a regular basis and like keeping up with those. I'd have to like say this week, a few times a year, I'm just going to make all of the convenience foods for myself and freeze them or can them or whatever, because with how hectic our life is, I have a hard time keeping up with like cycling through things like that. So I just really have to plan ahead and commit to spending a bunch of time all at once doing it. I don't know if that answers your question.
So it sounds like you would plan ahead more, but maybe that would pull from other projects you're doing. Maybe you couldn't grow as much food because you were dedicating time to cooking, or maybe you would sleep less, or maybe, it has to come from somewhere.
Well, not even growing less food. It's the fact that I'd have to be doing a bunch of prep for those prepared meals at one time. So I'd likely have to go buy the food to preserve because my garden's not usually giving me all of it at once. If I didn't work a 9 to 5, I think I could very easily never have to rely on fast food. Almost never, probably. Have to go impulse, get fast food or order something for delivery, get pizza, unless we're craving it for some reason, and we're willing to like go out and do that. But I don't know. I
Or
can
like
make
you're
pretty
sick
much,
or something,
yeah, like I don't know. I feel like I could do all of that, but it would take a lot of extra input to give it up completely. And I'm just not there yet. Like, I would love to get there, but working a full-time job and also doing all of the things that you guys know we do. It's not.
It's a lot.
I'm not going to go through the list. It's not feasible at the moment. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I would not eat. I'm not gonna lie, and that's why I'm glad I have that option, right? Because that's not what I want. I don't want to deprive my body of the things that it needs. I don't want to neglect myself. But if I had to cook every single meal I ever ate, I would definitely I would definitely not be able to do that perfectly. Yeah, and I don't it's a goal of mine to get better at that, right? But I don't think I will ever reach a point where I'm not relying on convenience foods to some extent. Now, does that mean every day? No. Like I think I think I don't know this, but in my head, I have it that like in a perfect scenario when I have my systems down, I can rely on convenience foods for one meal a week, which is probably dinner, and I might even like get enough to stretch that into like a dinner and a lunch, right? Like have leftovers. Um, and cook the rest of everything else. In my mind, I'm capable of that.
That's pretty much how things go for us at the moment with how this year has gone. I'd say it's about once every week or maybe 2 weeks that we end up like throwing in the towel and saying we're getting something or going out because it's just too busy. So I think we're about at that point too. I don't know. I just sometimes, and I really hope that we don't come across this way in this episode. We're just trying to like have a discussion about this and show you guys that even though we are doing homesteading and we're growing a bunch of food and preserving a bunch of food, like we are also doing regular society where we have 9 to 5 jobs. And sometimes it's kind of discouraging when you see other people in the homesteading community saying things like, it's almost like ultimatums where it's like, you are what your food eats. We're never eating out. Like we literally never, when somebody tells me they never go out to eat, that makes me feel so bad about myself. And I'm like, it shouldn't, because I know that you have different life circumstances than me, but like it still sucks, So I just feel like I just hope that this episode shows you that like we're normal people. We also eat out. We're not perfect. We're not perfect peak homestead. Like we still rely on convenience food, and maybe, we are striving for doing that less in the future, or, just overall.
I think normal might be a generous word, at least for myself. I don't know. I don't know if I'm normal, but yeah, as all or nothing of a person as I am not all or nothing in terms of homesteading. It can come across that there is no in between, that you are all in or you are all out. And if you're not all in, that you're not a real homesteader, that what you're doing isn't enough in quotations, right? homesteading and your life in general is whatever you want it to be. And to each their own, everyone's going to have something different that works for them. And so this is us. We happen to straddle two spheres, right? We happen to straddle the homesteading sphere, which is obsessed with self-sufficiency in a lot of ways, and we happen to straddle the, I don't know what the right word is, corporate, more
society.
normalized, mainstream aspect of society. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I hope that not that you guys need it, but I hope that gives you permission to do it in whatever way works for you, however, wherever you fall on that spectrum of things.
And I mean, that kind of goes back to like episode 2 or 3 of this podcast where we talked about what is homesteading. And I think I think myself, Sage, and Red all mentioned like homesteading is a mindset. Start with learning how to preserve food, start with learning how to grow food wherever you are. Start getting obsessed with food.
Don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah. Here we are talking about food for an hour and a half. Thinking about the way that we kind of go about life, and we've got you said we're straddling both spheres. We've got our toes in 2 different ponds of homesteading and mainstream society and how that all works. We've established that there's a lot to do, a lot to remember, a lot going on. Oftentimes food can be a stressful topic to think about. Why do you think you go out of your way to make food a priority most of the time?
Yeah, I think there's not one answer to that, but I think the main reason to at least start that discussion, right, is the quality of food. Unfortunately, we do live in a society where profit is king. And when you choose to make the trade-off of, okay, I'm going to, instead of, making my own food, I'm going to just give my money to a company and they can make the food for me. That comes along with certain inevitabilities of that company wants to make money. And if that company can make money by using lower quality ingredients, if that company can make money by including additives in their food that even make it more addictive so that you are hungrier and eat more at one time, or so that you crave it and come back later, they have every incentive to do that as long as it's legal, right? And so making my own food, even though it is a ton of work, I want that aspect of control over what is going into my body, because what you eat affects every other aspect of your life. Especially for me, when I eat food that is not homemade, I notice my mood regulation changes. I notice that is pretty much the only time that I will, have skin issues, that I might break out. I notice that I get worse sleep. I notice that my energy levels all over the place. Like it seriously affects me. I feel it. And I can't imagine living my life feeling like that all the time. And so that is probably the biggest reason that I go out of my way to make my own food.
I know we've talked about it a little bit before in previous episodes too, but I think part of that also ties into like ethics, whether you're eating like ethically raised meats and like obviously vegan, vegetarian, different plant-based, or opposite of plant-based. The ethics issue is something that can be tied into like why you might choose to focus more on food, even if you're just going to the store and you're specifically eating one type of diet in quotations. That's definitely a consideration. That's something that's a huge thing for me, is like I want, even though I'm not completely there yet, it is a huge goal of mine and I'm very conscious of it now that I eat meat again. I want to eat as much local, ethically raised meat that I possibly can, whether that's growing it myself, friends, neighbors, whatever, trading with them, buying it from them, if they are selling it, which we actually have some neighbors who are selling it. Jason and Lorraine are selling their meat now. So I think that's a huge part of it for me, especially coming back into it from being vegetarian. But also, like, I want to eat vegetables that I know were, I guess, well cared for, in like the sense that they're not being sprayed with a bunch of stuff that I don't really want to put in my body, whether it's me growing it or the farm store 20 minutes from me that I know doesn't spray their stuff, and then I'm just buying it from them.
You know, another consideration here is, at least where we are now, 2024, like, fast food might have started out as this convenient, cheap option, but everything is so expensive now that even the fast food options are becoming increasingly less economical. There are a handful of places that still have a budget menu, but you go to Wendy's, you go to McDonald's, it's like $10-12 for a meal. And that didn't used to be the case. And so, in my opinion, I think that their heads are getting a little big and they're kind of pricing themselves out of their market. But that brings in the factor of, like, it's not accessible for everybody. Not everyone can afford to buy what's convenient. And so, in an aspect, like, even this food that tends to be lower quality is a luxury, right?
The funniest thing about that to me, I guess it's not funny. It's not funny at all, actually. I feel like eating out or getting fast food is pretty expensive now, but I also feel like getting locally raised meat and organic veggies is also ridiculously expensive. So I feel like no matter what you choose, the convenience or the quality, like, you're spending a boatload of money unless you're just going to get like the basic, maybe bulk veggies at like a Walmart or like whatever the cheapest grocery store you can, like the salvage store or whatever. I still have a hard time justifying that, and we've talked about that plenty of times, like why I have a hard time with that mentality. But yeah, food's expensive, and especially if you're having it prepared for you in some way, it's really expensive, especially because all of the little things that they turn around. You have to tip everybody for everything, even if they just rung you up. Tip people, please. I'm not saying not to, but it's still a little frustrating to me that everybody everywhere has the tip things now.
Again, I blame American culture.
Yeah, a lot of people are having a hard time buying groceries at this point, and that sucks because a lot of people do not have a choice to buy higher quality food. So, kind of wrapping this up, I feel like it would be a good thing to talk about maybe some of the more convenient meals that we make at home that are full of the homegrown or locally grown, home preserved goodness, but still easy to throw together in a pinch. Do you have any of those that you kind of rely on?
Two come to mind. So it depends on how much energy I have. If I have a little bit of energy to throw a dinner together, then I'll do a stir fry, because you can chop up whatever vegetables you have, you can throw whatever protein you have in there, and it's all in one pan, and great. It's easy. But if I don't even have the energy to do that, I strategically keep a stash of frozen pasta, homemade pasta, but it's frozen, in the freezer, so that I can boil water, put the noodles in the water, and sometimes I'll pull pesto out, sometimes I'll just do olive oil, salt, garlic powder. Again, depends on how much energy I have, but it's food. There's egg in there. I can put whatever I'm in the mood for on it, because sometimes I'm a little picky with my food, and noodles are versatile and won't give me the ick. So those are my, like, I'm in a pinch, I don't have time or energy or the preparation to make a full meal. but I still need to eat something. Those are mine. What are yours?
I feel like I've said sloppy joes so many times. I love sloppy joes so much. I know a lot of people will do like they'll brown their ground beef and can it in the sauce. I just can the sauce because Taylor doesn't eat meat, so I just want the sauce on the shelf, and then I can make him lentils or beefless grounds or whatever. And then I don't have to worry about not having one for him. Like, I'm gonna have to get a pan out anyways, so I just brown the ground beef, cook up the lentils, and I pour a jar of sloppy joe sauce in each, and then I usually have buns in the freezer that we can thaw really quick while the ground beef is browning, and we always have cheese on hand, so we'll slap a little cheese and some green onions on those. And then breakfast for dinner would be another one, I'd say. We always have eggs. We always have way too many eggs. And there's always some sort of breakfast meat variety in the freezer, whether it's vegetarian or I usually have like bacon or sausages and stuff on hand. And then I mentioned this earlier, but I have a few jars of canned soups, like home canned soups. I have chicken noodle. I think I might have turkey noodle right now still from last year. And I think this year with some of my homegrown tomatoes in the freezer, I'm going to do a little bit of tomato soup. So really all I have to do for those is take some pasta out of the freezer or out of the pantry and boil it and then heat up the soup and it's ready to go. So I don't obviously have the pasta canned in the jars. That's not like a thing you can do, but it's still pretty convenient, and it's like the most convenient thing, especially when you're sick. I love having at least a few jars of that on the shelf so I can have a giant pho bowl, like the massive like ramen pho bowls full of chicken noodle soup when I'm sick. I really enjoy that. I think that's it for me. Those are like the main fast food meals that I keep around, but I'm curious to anybody listening, give us some ideas. Maybe we'll try and do some of those bulk days where we actually try and keep some fast food on our shelves. So let us know what your favorite fast food home cooked meals are in the comments below.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of She Said Homestead. We hope you enjoyed our chat. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to hear from you. Send your homesteading stories to us at shesaidhomestead@gmail.com. We can't wait to share them on the air. To stay connected, follow us on Instagram for updates and sneak peeks at what's coming up next.
If you like video podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the She Said Homestead YouTube channel too. We can't thank you enough for being part of the She Said Homestead community. Until next time, happy homesteading.